Hi, this is Aisha Jordan, Program Associate with Fiscal Sponsorship at Fractured Atlas. Can everybody hear me all right? If you can hear me, please type yes in the little box there. Wonderful. And just to be sure before we get started as well, can you see the slide that I have up on the screen there? Wonderful. I'm getting a lot of yes, yes, yes. Great. So, good evening. You are a part of the orientation for new fiscally sponsored projects with Fractured Atlas. Again, my name is Aisha Jordan, and I am a program associate in fiscal sponsorship at Fractured Atlas. And we want to thank you for taking the time to attend this webinar. We appreciate having proactive members who go out of their way to learn about our program's policies and procedures before they dive headfirst into our fundraising. So if at any time you can't hear me or you can't see what I am doing, please type into the little box and let me know, and we'll make sure we can troubleshoot any technical difficulties that might happen in tonight's webinar. But hopefully, fingers crossed, nothing goes wrong. And tonight's webinar is being recorded, so don't feel pressured to get every single note down as we're going through. We will send you a link to the recording later this week. And you're welcome to share with anyone that might be interested in our fiscal sponsorship program or anyone else that works on the project that you have. There will be an opportunity at the end of the presentation to ask questions, but you can feel free to chat any questions as we're going along. I can't say that I'll be able to answer them right away, but if I can, I will go through and answer as we're going. But again, there will be a time at the end for you to answer any questions. So I do suggest saving it for later, but if you have anything pressing at that time in the presentation, I'll try to get to it. All right, so first things first, a little bit about Fractured Atlas. So in the past 12 months, our fiscally sponsored projects have raised $18,658,514, and that's in the last 12 months of this year. And as I'm sure you're aware by now, our fiscal sponsorship program extends some of the benefits of our 501c3 status to artists and arts organizations so that they can solicit tax-deductible donations from individuals and institutional funding, which otherwise you may not be available to you without nonprofit status. And currently, we have 3,759 fiscally sponsored projects with Fractured Atlas. They are either producing one-off projects, discrete projects like maybe a single film or a dance production, or we're sponsoring them for their ongoing artistic activities, so a startup theater company or works in progress of a visual artist, things of that sort. Ultimately, we have the largest fiscal sponsorship program in the nonprofit arts sector. And how many Fractured Atlas staff members administer this program? 7. Yes, there is about 7 staff members that run the fiscal sponsorship program. And we're able to run the fiscal sponsorship program with such a limited staff because we have several different online tools that help you to do what you need to do. So, and everyone can still see my slides, yes? Make sure. All right, I'll keep going. Right, so only 3 of our staff members are actually dedicated full-time to the program. So here's our dream team, and that's me up there at the top, right there, Aisha Jordan. And then to my left, you'll see Nathan Zavidio. He's one of our program specialists. Below him, you'll see Diane DiBisella, who is our senior program director of fiscal sponsorship. And then next to her, you'll see Teresa Hubbard, another program specialist in fiscal sponsorship, and Courtney Hard. She's one of our program associates. And 2 people that you actually don't see up here quite yet is our member associate, Sabrina Cedeno, and also our other program associate, Lauren Lattimore. Yeah. So the way, as I mentioned, that we're able to run these programs with such a small staff, but still run them smoothly and efficiently, is that we have custom-built online tools that mean a large portion of the program is automated, and there's a great deal of functionality at your fingertips that allows you to control a large portion of your fundraising activities. And the purpose of today's presentation is to show you a path forward with our fiscal sponsorship program by giving you a tour of what's available for you on our website and outline some of our program policies and procedures. All right. So once our board of directors approves you for our program, you'll be able to log into our website and access your My Fiscal Sponsorship page. Now, this is your primary portal for interacting with the program. We're going to talk you through some of the features of this page as well as the program manual. And of course, there's no substitute for hands-on learning, and we can't possibly cover every single thing in this presentation. So I strongly encourage you to look through this site thoroughly, and specifically this page, and then go through our program manual. You know, it's only 35 pages, so I do suggest going through each one to make sure you're abreast of all of our procedures. And make sure this is your first step as you start sponsorship with us. So one of the first things to understand about our fiscal sponsorship program is that it makes a distinction between earned revenue and contributed revenue. So earned revenue is something like ticket sales or money that you make from merchandise or payments that are made to you for services that you provide for your project, things like that. Now, earned revenue needs to be made payable directly to you. We don't process earned revenue for the purpose of fiscally sponsored projects. We can only accept contributed revenue. So contributed revenue is things like donations, grants, non-cash gifts that are given to your project, things like that. Now, we now accept projects that do have for-profit investors, though we cannot process private investments or equity. And there's a separate addendum that we ask projects to sign if they're expecting for-profit investors. And if anyone wants to know more about that, you can email us at support@fracturedatlas.org. So we can only process charitable donations from individuals or institutions for the purposes of your sponsored project. So accepting donations, we can help you process donations, contributed revenue, of course, in 3 different ways. So by debit or credit card on our website or on a crowdfunding campaign with Indiegogo that has been linked to your fiscal sponsorship. Or we can do donation by check, and checks wouldn't need to be made payable to Fractured Atlas. And then we also accept non-cash donations of goods made in kind for the charitable purposes of your project. And we'll go into this a little bit more as we go forward in the presentation. So each of our fiscally sponsored projects has a donation landing page on our website where they can direct donors who want to contribute by debit or credit card. Now, we can accept credit or debit card donations up to $20,000 per transaction. And that doesn't mean, the donor can't give more than $20,000. They can just go ahead and do another separate transaction after the first $20,000 transaction. And if you have the inviolable problem of someone who wants to give more than that, what they can do is they can also give us check donations. And one of the things to look out for as you're doing credit card donations, multiple ones, I would just make sure that you wait about 5 minutes in between transactions because it then can be seen as a duplicate in our records, and we want to make sure that donors are able to give what they had wanted to give without any issues. So donors can contribute by credit card and are required to provide an email address. And with that email address, we automatically send them a tax receipt. And please note that you are prohibited from collecting credit card information for your donors and entering it into our website on your own. Donors must input their own debit or credit card info or contact Fractured Atlas to process a donation over the phone. This opens us up to some liability issues, as you may know, as a sponsored project. And you are not authorized to use our credit card processor in this way. So your donor landing page is a public-facing page on our website where you should put content that you want potential donors to see. This can be an image or YouTube video and a brief description of your project or what your current activities are. So you can edit your sponsored project's online profile on our website through your My Fiscal Sponsorship page under the Online Profile button. When you submit changes, an automated email will go to a member of our staff asking for review and approval before it goes live on our website. We typically turn this around in about 1 to 2 business days. We'll either approve the changes outright or we'll be in touch with you directly via email if we have any questions about the new material that you're putting up on your profile. And if I'm going too fast, let me know. I tend to speak pretty fast normally. So if I'm going too fast and people are getting confused, feel free to type in slow down. All right, so we can also accept check donations, as I mentioned before. Checks would need to be made payable to Fractured Atlas, and you're welcome to have your donors write your name or the name of your sponsored project in the memo line, but this isn't entirely necessary because we ask that your donors mail you their contribution first. And we'll get into a little bit more of that in a minute. So once you receive the check donation from your donors, you're then going to report the donation made by check on your My Fiscal sponsorship page under the donations button there. So you see where the big green thing is there, you'll see checks and you'll click report. So here's where you'll create the donor record for your check contributions. You provide the donor's name, contact info, and other info available to you from their check before forwarding on to us for processing and deposit. And you'll definitely be surprised how many unreported checks that arrive at the Fractured Atlas office, and we end up spending a lot of time doing detective work trying to figure out whose fiscally sponsored project that they are designated for. And there are oftentimes that we will mail back the unreported checks to the project because it's really important that we receive this report online in order to process it properly. So to go over that one more time, the donor will send the check to you first. Checks are made out to Fractured Atlas. They can put your project name in the memo line. Then you will then record the donation online through your My Fiscal sponsorship page, excuse me. And then you would send us the check for processing in the mail. And then we would actually forward the tax receipt onto you that you would then forward on to your donors. So we can accept check donations of any size, but those of $1,000 or more, we require an extra piece of documentation called the Major Gift Letter. So the Major Gift Letter is a simple form letter that is available for you to download from your My Fiscal sponsorship page for your donor to complete and sign. You'll be able to upload the Major Gift Letter as an attachment to the donation report, but it's not required. And you can feel free to send us the check to process before we receive the Major Gift Letter. If you aren't able to attain both at the same time, that's fine. We're happy to process the reported checks of $1,000 or more without a Major Gift Letter, but please know that the donated funds will not be made available to you until we do receive that signed and completed letter. Yeah, great. So here's a couple things, a couple types of donations that we actually cannot accept. We cannot accept donations of cash. So if anyone wants to give a donation to you for, $25 and they want to just hand it to you right away, they would not be able to get a tax receipt for that donation. And that's not something that could come through Fractured Atlas. Another type of donation we cannot process is money orders. In order for us to be able to issue a tax receipt, we need to be able to directly link the money back to a specific individual or entity. So a credit cards transaction or a check with the donor's bank account and routing numbers on it provides exactly what we need to process a donation and give a tax receipt. And again, you're welcome to accept cash or money orders directly from your donors, but that's a contribution that wouldn't be able to be tax deductible for them, and we would not be able to issue a tax receipt for them. Okay. So we can, however, accept non-cash or in-kind donations. And these donations have to be something physical or tangible that you can hold, something that exists in the real world, and the ownership of which is fully donated over to your project. So let's talk about that a little bit further. We can only process donations of physical, tangible items. So they need to exist in the real world and you can touch them with your hand. Donations of a person's time. There you go, there's a little clock. A donation of a person's time or services are not considered by the IRS to be charitable tax deductible donations. So if a restaurant donates food or beverage to you, they can get a receipt for those items. But if they donate their catering services, they could not get a tax receipt for that. And because that's included as a service. So we can, however, accept gift cards or gift certificates from businesses that otherwise sell these items. That again is like a tangible item that you can hold. So in order to be tax deductible, non-cash donations need to be fully donated over to the charitable purposes of your sponsored project. So donations of rent or rental items, they wouldn't count. If someone gives you equipment for free that they would normally charge a rental fee for, and you need to return the items when you're done, that's really more of a loan. Similarly, donated space wouldn't count as tax deductible, as you're only being given partial interest in the property. Finally, we cannot accept donations of donated airfare or air miles or automobiles. And this is all because if you were donated airline miles or an airline ticket, the 501c3 organization has to be the one who is traveling. So it would have to be a Fractured Atlas staff member traveling. So that's why we can't really accept them for our fiscally sponsored projects. All right. So as with check donations, you would need to report a non-cash donation on your My Fiscal Sponsorship page as well. And here you'll be able to download the non-cash donation letter, which I'll talk about next. So this is another simple form letter for your donor to fill out, where they provide a description and the value of the items that they are contributing. And you can upload this non-cash donation letter to the donation report when you submit it through your My Fiscal Sponsorship page. So for non-cash donations valued at $250 or more, we do require a photograph of the donated item or items. So we can be sure to take that photograph as soon as you receive the donation. A lot of people will get, a donation of food, and then the food gets consumed and they haven't been able to take a picture of it. So make sure you take a picture right as you get it. And one of the things that require for donations of $5,000 or more, we do require an appraisal form from a qualified appraiser. And this is something that the donor will want to have as documentation anyways when they deduct the contribution on their taxes. So with all donations that we process for the purposes of our fiscally sponsored projects, we deduct an administrative fee to cover the costs of running this program. Our administrative fees pay for our staff, time, our website, and things like credit card processing and bank fees. And the fee starts at 7%. But as you raise more money, the fee is lowered on check donations. If you raise $150,000 or more over the lifetime of your fiscal sponsorship, the administrative fee on check donations goes down to 6%. At $500,000 or more, it's reduced to 5%. And if you raise $1 million or more, the fee goes down to 4%. And we have had projects raise at least that much money over their time with us. The fee does remain at 7% for credit card donations, as the processing fee that we incur doesn't change when it comes to credit card donations. We also charge the 7% fee on the stated value of donated cash items. So you can either have us charge this fee to the credit card that we'll have on file for you, or you can have it deducted from your available fund balance. And that's something you can choose as you're reporting it online. So, and you can always check your fund balance on your My Fiscal Sponsor page right here. So you can see, you'll go on to My Fiscal Sponsorship, click Info Reports, and then it should pop up right there how much money you have available and how much is in your balance. All right, but maybe we're going a little too fast and we should take a step back. Because before we even start processing donations, how do we get people to actually consider making a contribution? Well, we ask. So, as this is often the first hurdle that budding arts entrepreneurs encounter, every day I talk to artists or art startups who are experiencing initial queasiness about actually asking people for money. And I encourage our fiscally sponsored projects to consider themselves in good company. I myself have a project that I have to fundraise for, and I know myself and some of the other members of my group have issues asking for money. But you know what? All nonprofit artistic ventures in the United States require philanthropic support to keep in operation. I mean, that goes for the Metropolitan Opera in New York City or the Getty Museum in LA. So don't consider it panhandling or begging. Consider it an offer. You're offering potential patrons an opportunity to get involved with something bigger than themselves. And with fiscal sponsorship, offering them tax deductibility as well. And that's a big plus. And as soon as you're approved for fiscal sponsorship, we recommend that you send out an appeal asking for people to make a contribution and to let them know that their donation will now be tax deductible. And some different ideas are an e-blast, snail mail campaign, a newsletter, put it on your website, host a fundraising event, or run a crowdfunding campaign. All of them you should consider at some point as part of your larger fundraising strategy. Okay, and when we have an individual appeal letter template online, among other fundraising templates available for you to take a look at. And this is all on your My Fiscal Sponsorship page. See how crucial that page is for our sponsored projects. Crafting a good letter is more than just, plugging in your info into a formula and pressing send. So I'd strongly encourage you to use this template as a way to kickstart your brainstorming about the letter that you intend to send out. But before you send out the appeal to your potential donors, please send us a copy first for our review and approval. Now, you can email fundraising materials over to support@fracturedatlas.org. And a good rule of thumb is that anytime you mention Fractured Atlas or promise patrons tax deductibility, you should run it by us before sending it out. And we require that just for a few reasons. First, it's always in your best interest to have another experienced pair of eyes take a look at what you're about to send out. At this point, I've reviewed probably hundreds of donor solicitations at least, and we have a pretty good idea of what a successful, well-presented appeal letter looks like. We can offer you some tips and tools to potentially maximize the effectiveness of your fundraising materials. So we'll definitely provide feedback where appropriate, but we're also looking to see that you're correctly representing the fiscal sponsorship arrangement. To that end, we've crafted some standard texts that require you to include on your donor solicitation materials. And this can be found on page 12 of the program manual that you've received. And it's just a quick 2-sentence paragraph that succinctly summarizes the fiscal sponsorship arrangement. You're welcome to include it as fine print at the bottom of your materials, but it must be there somewhere. And you can check out on page 12, there's different standardized text for different situations. So for partially deductible donations and for individual donations, things like that. Just make sure you're using the proper one for the ask that you're giving. So we're also looking to see if you're offering an exchange for your contributions, for example, advertising space. So that's one of the things that we can't actually offer as a perk to our donors is advertising space. So and we do this, there's a versus advertising versus corporate sponsorship is something that we talk with our projects very often. Advertising would be, one of your donors wants to give you $5,000. In return, you're going to make sure that you have Chrysler cars are the only car that you use in your film. That would be considered advertising space because now they're getting in return advertisement in your film for the donation that they've given. Corporate sponsorship is if, let's say, Bank of America has given you some funds for your film project, but they aren't requiring anything in return. But they might ask you to put maybe a mention of them in your credits or something like that, just to acknowledge that they did support you, but they're not actually looking for any advertising space. So if anyone has more questions about that, you can email us and we can get into a little bit more detail about that. So other things we might be looking for are running a raffle. This might be a good idea, but you're prohibited from running it through our fiscal sponsorship project with us. To reiterate, you cannot award donors raffle tickets in exchange for a tax-deductible donations. See, raffles are considered a form of gambling, which is regulated at the state level. And so it's not something that Fractured Atlas wants to get involved with. It gets pretty hairy when those kind of regulations come into play. So whenever you offer your donors rewards of goods and services in exchange for their contribution, this makes the donation partially deductible above and beyond the fair market value of the rewards they are receiving. So, for instance, if you have a fundraising event and you want to have donations set at $100 and a normal ticket price for that type of event is $50, then only $50 of that donation is tax deductible for your donor, and that needs to be stated for them. And for us, we need donations to be at least partially tax deductible. You wouldn't be able to offer donors rewards of equal or greater value to the amount that they are contributing. Such an exchange no longer becomes contributed revenue and is a purchase or earned revenue. For instance, if they wanted to give a donation for a painting and the painting's worth $70 and they gave $70, then therefore it's become earned revenue at this point. So one place where partial deductibility often comes into play is our crowdfunding campaign. So we partner with the platform Indiegogo so that you can create campaigns on their site that are linked to your fiscal sponsorship with us. That way, we're able to process donations made to your campaign and issue donors tax receipts. In the year 2016, it's likely that you've heard of crowdfunding and supported campaigns yourself, so you know what it is. And we encourage our projects to run a campaign at least once as part of their overall fundraising strategy. So, yep, as I said, we have a partnership with Indiegogo that allows you to link your fiscally sponsored project with your campaign with Indiegogo. So again, it's a great tool for both funds and awareness about your work. You can set a deadline and fundraising goal and often offer different giving levels where you incentivize donations by rewarding donors for their contribution. These perks are often partially tax deductible. So we'll be looking for you to provide info related to the fair market value of what you offer donors in exchange. And Indiegogo does have a section in their perks for you to indicate that. So before your campaign launches, we want to take a look first to provide feedback and make sure your giving levels take into account the potential partial deductibility. To get started crowdfunding, you could head to your My Fiscal Sponsor page and click on the Accessorize button. And then you see we have Rocket Hub there. We actually no longer have our partnership with Rocket Hub. We do only continue our partnership with Indiegogo, just letting you know that. And sometimes there is an issue with our API between Indiegogo. So if you ever encounter any technical errors as you're creating your campaign, please check in with us at support@fracturedatlas.org so that we can make sure your campaign gets linked to your fiscal sponsorship with us before it goes live. And this is very important. A lot of people will think that they're pressing review and submit for us to review and launch it, but they actually have launched it themselves. And once a campaign goes live and is donated to, we actually cannot link it to your fiscally sponsored project. So when in doubt, I'd say make sure that it's connected. And one of the indicators is that you'll see our Fractured Atlas logo on your campaign. But again, you can always email us to double check. So alternatively, if you don't want to run a crowdfunding campaign, or if you want to offer giving levels to donors on an ongoing basis, you can add some to your donor landing page on our website. So from the My Fiscal Sponsorship page, click the donations button and then giving levels, and you can see right there, giving levels. Your donors will then be presented with options on our website for different giving levels that they can contribute at. And if you want to offer donors rewards, their online debit or credit card donation can be partially tax deductible. So fiscal sponsorship can also open you the door to institutional funding, and this can be from foundations or corporations. And as with approvals of your individual solicitations and crowdfunding campaigns, we want to be involved when you're applying for grants from these sources as well. So before you start looking at grants, however, just to let you know, we do have a grant eligibility requirement. So we require that our projects raise at least $1,000 from individuals before looking to apply for grants. And this is because funders have actually contacted us and let us know that they would rather fund projects that have a committed donor base and have raised money before applying. And again, if you have raised money before being fiscally sponsored with us, you can just show us proof that you've raised money for the specific project that you're working on, and then we can waive that requirement for you. And we can talk more about that if you want to email us as well. So The review process. You'll send us all of the grant application materials, and we require this at least 10 business days before the due date of the grant. So any materials that you have, LOIs or any of the application questions, things like that, we need to see all of the materials before they go for submission. And it also varies. Sometimes there will be a grant that has an online application. We require the login information so that we can go in, take a look and approve it, and provide any of our necessary documents before you submit the grant. Yeah, so that takes about 10 business. That's why we ask for the 10 business days ahead of time. So that gives us time to review and to provide any proper edits or information that might need to come from Fractured Atlas. And although the grant is being looked over by Fractured Atlas and things like that, it is still the project's responsibility in order to get the materials in. So any letters that you need to write, any of answering the questions, budgets, things like that, all needs to be done by the project and that we can go. So we definitely ask you to look at the grant eligibility requirements and requirements for application before coming to us to make sure it's a right fit for you, and make sure that you're adhering to everything the grant is requiring, especially if you are awarded a grant, any reporting requirements that are needed. That is still up to the project to administer. Okay, so now that you've successfully solicited donations and have patrons donate to your fiscally sponsored project, what next? How do you access these donated funds? Well, first you'll need to send us the info from your checking account, and you can do so by downloading the sign-up form for electronic fund transfer, or EFT. You can do this from your My Fiscal Sponsorship page under the Fund Releases button. Now, we strongly recommend that you have an account for your project's finances that is separate from your own personal finances. Now, it doesn't mean that it has to be a business account. It can be a separate personal checking account. This way, you just get to keep separate the funds that are for your project and funds that are in your own personal expenses. So here's what it looks like. It's pretty simple, and you can send us the completed form with a voided check in 3 ways. You can scan it and email it to support@fracturedatlas.org. You can fax it to 212-277-8025, or you can snail mail it to us, and all of our contact info is available on our website. So the reason that we need a voided check is that we need to give authorization. We need to have authorization from you as a project to make transfers to your bank account, and we need proof of the account routing number and the account number itself. So make sure you have that. And if you don't have checks, that's all right as well. A bank statement or a letter from the bank stating the account number and the routing number and the address of the account holder could also suffice. I know we've kind of moved beyond the age of having written checks, so that is what we offer for documentation. So once we receive your checking account info, you'll be able to submit a fund release request through our website for available funds. Now, one thing to know is that we hold all donations that come in for your project for 7 days in order for them to clear and for us to process before they're made available to you to request for release. After the 7 days, donate funds are available for you to request, unless you're waiting on a major gift letter from a check donation of $1,000 or more. Once you receive that letter, then the funds would be made available. And we are actually happy to hold on to your donated funds as long as you need us to, provided that you remain a dues-paying member of Fractured Atlas with an active fiscally sponsored project, and then you can release them to you whenever you have project-related expenses. We don't automatically transfer funds to our projects when they're donated, and as a fiscal sponsor, we need to demonstrate that we maintain a certain degree of discretion and control over how funds raised through our program are used. These fund release request process is a control in place to make sure that fiscally sponsored projects are using funds in alignment with our charitable mission. So when you submit a fund release request, you'll let us know how much you need and how you'll be spending the money using some pretty broad expense category budget line items. So you can say that $1,000 is for public relations or $500 is for space rental. There is an other expense category, but here's a helpful hint. We almost never let anyone use the other explanation for the expenses, and almost 100% of the time, your expenses will fit into one of the categories provided. One thing that you're not allowed to do is re-grant funds raised through our program to another individual or entity with no strings attached. The best use of fiscal sponsorship is to raise money to create on expenditures related to the art you are creating or services that you are providing. And this can include paying people a salary or a stipend for their time, but you're not able to award grants through fiscal sponsorship to other entities or other charities. So, for particularly large fund release requests, an explanation of documentation is required. So, receipts, contracts, invoices, and this is something we require for fund release requests of $5,000 or more. Now, a lot of people get kind of worried about it because they'll say, but I haven't spent the money and I need the money to get the receipts. So, we actually have a very flexible documentation requirement. You can actually take screenshots of things that you might be looking to buy. For instance, plane tickets for an artist. You can take a screenshot of how much it will cost and send us that as documentation. Contracts of things that have not been paid yet, quotes for services that have not been rendered yet, things like that to allow you to release the money before you are able to have the receipt. So when you apply for fiscal sponsorship, if you recall, you're asked to provide a legal entity with a U.S. taxpayer ID. This is either an individual with their social security number or business entity with its employer identification number or EIN. Now, we can work with any type of legal entity, an individual sole proprietor, an S corporation, an LLC, anything like that. And we ask for this because funds dispersed through our fiscal sponsorship program are reported as income to that legal entity in the form of a grant. So each January, we issue a 1099 miscellaneous to individuals, partnerships, and LLCs, showing funds dispersed that previous calendar year as Box 3, Other, or Grant Income to file with their other tax documents. Now, corporations are not issued 1099s, but they are still need to report Fractured Atlas's income on their 990. So that said, you should not necessarily have to pay income tax on Fractured Atlas's fund releases. So we actually suggest you having a bookkeeper or someone who can take uh, great records of the funds that you're releasing, and then that way you'll be able to offset the costs. And because we only release funds to you when you request it for use on your specific project-related expenses, you should be able to offset the income on your taxes using the expenses that the funds are paid for. And again, we strongly suggest using an accountant or a tax lawyer to help you file properly. So an important thing to keep in mind is that your project is a separate business entity from Fractured Atlas. And one of the great aspects of this is that you maintain complete ownership over your work that you create. So we don't grant you 501c3 status, only the IRS can do that. Rather, we extend some of the benefits of our nonprofit status to the projects that we sponsor. To that extent, we want you to check in with us on a few things. Primarily, the use of our tax ID. I'm sure if a friend of yours asked for your social security number, you would be curious about why. So in that same way, anytime you encounter a situation that requires our EIN, please let us know so that we can advise on its usage. And we're happy to provide sponsorship confirmation letters addressed to the specific potential donors or sponsors to help, grease the wheels. But we can't provide one size fits all confirmation document with our EIN, as we want to be involved in each and every time someone is requesting our info. So you can just email us at support@fracturedatlas.org and with all the information from the institution that's requesting our information. Now, we're not able to help you set up a bank account using our EIN. Any account that you create needs to be set up in your own name with your own tax ID. So don't sign up for anything that requires our tax ID without running it by us first, and we can advise you on that. We can also provide a letter to help you obtain nonprofit rates from vendors that offer them. So it's ultimately up to the vendor if they will extend you the rate, but most are willing to do so. So this is specifically helpful with space rentals. If the venue offers a nonprofit rate, we can usually help you get a discount. And again, just shoot us an email and we'll send you a letter. Nonprofit rates do not apply to bulk postage for mailings. Just be aware of that. And this is something that you would have to access if you had your own 501c3 status. We're also not able to help you with sales tax exemption. This is because sales tax is regulated at the state level. So, in order to comply with our equal services for all of our projects, we don't offer that because our 501c3 would only allow sales tax exemption in the state of New York. So we want to make sure we're providing proper service for all our projects. So the final major fiscal sponsorship policy to bring to your attention is our annual report. For any fiscally sponsored project that either processed donations or requested fund releases in a given calendar year, we're going to require that you submit to us an annual report updating us on your activities. The report is due on April 1st every year, and we will send out 3 reminders stating at the beginning of the year. If you don't complete the report by April 1st, we will freeze your project. But it's relatively simple to unfreeze your fiscal sponsorship. All you need to do is submit the report and let us know, and we can unfreeze your project for you. Okay, so you can access your annual report on the My Fiscal Sponsorship page under the Info or Reports button. So the report is entirely online, so you don't need to prepare a different document and has 2 major components. The first is that we ask you to provide a brief narrative description of what you accomplished in the previous calendar year. This can be as detailed as you'd like, although we would provide that you keep it relatively brief so that it doesn't take us too long to review. And this can be with your narrative. You provide a numerical impact for your work to show how many people were exposed to your work and how many artists participated. We also ask for updated financials. Because we only process contributed revenue for your fiscally sponsored project, we're only aware of income and expenditures related to the funds that we've handled. So here's an opportunity to tell us about other funds handled separately from the program, where they came from, and how they were spent. Also, if you changed how funds released through our program were spent, like if you originally had spent $1,000 for transportation but ended up spending it on labor for artists, then you can let us know in the annual report. So the annual report is another important way that we demonstrate the discretion and control over how funds raised through our program are used. But this is also a way for us to collect data about the artists and arts organizations that we serve so that we can better understand our own impact in the nonprofit arts sector in the United States. The more accurately you can provide the data, the more complete is our picture of the kind of business our sponsored projects are able to do in their own communities. So I'm going to open for questions momentarily, but I hope you've gotten a sense of how easy our fiscal sponsorship program is to use and how much power you actually have at your fingertips through our online tools available on our website. Now, I would encourage you once again to thoroughly explore your My Fiscal Sponsorship page, and our program manual for a more comprehensive overview of all of our program policies and procedures. And before we open up for questions, I'd like to quickly plug Fractured Atlas's other programs and services. So first, there's Artfully. So Artfully is a ticketing service that we provide that allows you to set up events and sell tickets to your events, but also track donors and patrons. It's an amazing service that actually you can link to your fiscally sponsored project. So any donors that give to your project, that if you sign up for Artfully, they'll merge, and you can set up any events that you might be doing. For instance, if you're doing a theater performance or anything like that. And then Space Finder. Space Finder is an online marketplace that matches renters to venues based on their unique needs. So the best thing about Space Finder is that you can search in different categories, and it makes it super easy to find exactly what you need. You could search by price, you could search by location, you could search by type of event. I actually personally use it all the time. It's one of the best systems for finding space. Right. So our other one is our insurance program. So we actually offer insurance through Fractured Atlas for your events, for your people, for your artwork, things like that. And you can actually get a quote from our insurance and buy insurance through us. It's been very, very valuable for our film projects, theater projects, all types of projects. So I do suggest checking it out. So if there are any questions, please feel free to type them in now and we can answer some of your questions. Does anyone have any questions, or was that just such a perfect presentation? Okay, I see Joyce asking about the $1,000 requirement. Yes, so if you've raised, you're asking if you've raised $1,000 before being fiscally sponsored by Fractured Atlas, if those checks need to be made out. No, if you've raised them before being fiscally sponsored, you would not need them to be made out to Fractured Atlas. You just need to show us proof that you did receive $1,000 before being sponsored by us. And if you're talking about once you are fiscally sponsored, yes, any checks would need to be made out to Fractured Atlas once you're sponsored by us. If they want a tax receipt, it would need to be made out to Fractured Atlas. And you said you've been receiving checks, but they're made out to you. That's perfectly fine as well. You just send us kind of proof of the payments, and we should be able to waive that requirement. So if there are any other questions, again, it's super easy to look over our website and find some of the answers that you might need. If you leave this presentation and you realize you have a million other questions that you didn't get to ask, you can always email us at support@fracturedatlas.org, and we can get to your questions there. And again, I do suggest looking over the program manual and checking out the site and just playing around before contacting us. So yeah, this is just some information about the pictures and things that were included within the webinar, if you'd like to know where those came from. And also some information about our other webinars that we have. We offer several different webinars here at Fractured Atlas given by different associates in our fiscal sponsorship team. So I highly recommend keeping abreast of when these webinars are coming up so you can just be able to see how better you can run your artistic projects. So thank you so much for everyone taking the time to attend tonight's presentation. And if you don't have any more questions, that means I've done my presentation properly. And thankfully, I knocked on wood. We didn't have any technical difficulties, so yay for that. And again, if you have any other questions, feel free to email us at support@fracturedatlas.org. And again, this is being recorded, so within the next week or so, we will send you a link to the presentation so you can watch it once again. Yeah, so if anyone doesn't have any other questions, I believe we are, oh, I see a couple other. Oh, someone is asking about the 7-day wait for checks. It is counting weekends. So within 7 days, your amount should be available to you. And you said you've already gotten 3 checks that went to Fractured Atlas. They're available 7 days once we process them. So not once they're sent. As soon as we receive them and we process them, then within 7 days they are available to you to release. And then, yes, so if you want to release the funds that are available to you, depending on the size of the fund release, we would require documentation for that. But make sure that you set up the EFT so that there is a bank account that is connected to your fiscally sponsored project that we can send the money to. Yeah, I hope that all makes sense. So any other questions before we end tonight? Well, thank you, everyone. Yes, thank you. I see all the very thank yous. um, yeah, so again, if you need anything, support at fractured.org. We're here. We can help you with any other questions you might have. All right, everyone. Have a good night.